If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
About 48.
Willing to die for.
About 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
About
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die for.
The family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal self.
About 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yes unborn.
Gloria, Miss Janine, if you all feel like you're ready, we can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Well, many of you who are guests tonight might know me. I'm Storm from Black Panther Party of San Diego. Also have Dee Dee and Venus here with me, who are also from our local chapters of the B.P.P and T.P.P. Tonight we're talking about our women who are political prisoners and the impact that that really has on the community as a whole, and why we need to support people who are political prisoners and continue the push for them to be released. Miss Gloria Verdieu, many of you know her from being a friend of the library, and like I've seen Miss Gloria everywhere in the community for years and have appreciated her work. I'm sure I cannot even give the list of things that she does because I always see her out supporting. Is going to be leading this discussion. And Miss Gloria, if you'll also take care of the introduction of Miss Janine. Thank you guys so much for being here and for sharing this information with us. This is going to be really powerful. And we just hope that everyone takes note and takes action.
Yes, so I am Gloria. A lot of you may know me from the Coalition to Free Mumia Abu Jamal. And of course, I do a lot of volunteer service at the Malcolm X Library. That's my library. So I want to thank you, Storm, for inviting me to lead this discussion because I do work. I do a lot of stuff. I'm a writer too for Struggle to Lucha. So I do a lot of stuff with political prisoners. And also, I am just so excited that when I called Janine Africa, she answered the phone. And when I talked to her about, the discussion with the Black Panthers here in San Diego, Janine is in Philadelphia. So right now it is really late for her. It's late for her. So let's be mindful of that, that we want to have a discussion to discuss the impact of incarceration on women, and specifically women political prisoners. So when Storm called and asked me to lead that discussion, I gave it a lot of thought before I replied. But then when I thought, I said, to get the real answer, we need to talk with, some people, get it from the source, someone that's been incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, and maybe even a political prisoner. Because nowadays, with Zoom and with all this technology, you can political prisoners pretty much speak on the phone. I've talked with Reverend Jory Powell. She's already been in prison for 16 years, and she's, got a hit for, another 30 years, 40 years. So it's just so many, and women, the focus on women is just not focused. I mean, we'll get some answers from Janine, but our focus is really on the men in prison. We don't really talk much about the women in prison. But when Storm called me, I was just finishing up a women's program at the Malcolm X Library, and that program was titled, honoring courageous, remarkable women. And we have one courageous, remarkable woman right here. And y'all should be really proud of her. I'm just so proud. And so, it's just, it's just so exciting to, to see you, Janine, and to have you here to talk about the impacts of, prison on women, women political prisoners, how it impacted you. So just a little background, in San Diego, I mean, Janine and Janet actually came to the Malcolm X Library back in December 2019, only months from their release from prison. And I always say release from prison rather than freedom, because these remarkable women and men, the Move Nine, they are free, as well as Mumia Abu Jamal. They're free. Their mind is free. Their body may be incarcerated, but their mind is free. So they were released, and that was May 25th. That's African Liberation Day. And we have to look at this because these things are all significant. The system does things of significance. We have to know our history and know what's going on. So I called Janine, like I said, and she answered, and I asked her, I said, would you help to lead a discussion on how, incarceration affects, women, particularly, incarcerated women? And right away she says, yes, I'm there. And, the fact that we're doing it this late at night, I was just like, so enthusiastic about it. I was just so proud of her. Jenny, you don't know how proud I was of you doing this. I've seen her speak on many of these because she's still involved in the fight to free Mumia Abu Jamal and all political prisoners. And we already had a discussion about political prisoners. And I want to give just an overview of the MOVE organization. One thing about the MOVE organization is that they're in nature and natural life. They are into natural foods, clean water, clean air, natural birth, breastfeeding, all of these things. That's now Earth, and now we have Earth Day now. So the MOVE organization is the beginning of this. So they started something that we're all working on right now, and that's just so amazing because right now, now that Janine is out, she says, like, right now I have a air filter in my house. You buy water. I mean, it's buying water is just natural. It's just we buy our water because we can't really trust drinking water out of the sink. So they were harassed and beat down by the police because of their beliefs. But they're held on to their beliefs. Even in prison, they held on to their beliefs. And so I have to salute you. These women are revolutionary because their ideas are revolutionary. So right now, I know you could be speaking at all these Earth, Save the Earth campaigns and stuff like that. So it's amazing that the things that you were, fighting against and protesting is something that we are, we're at this critical point right now where everybody wants to go back to nature. Everybody wants to have their babies naturally, breastfeed. Everybody wants to grow their own food. Everybody wants to do this. And these are things that you guys, initiated, back then. So that's one thing I want to say, but there's a lot of impact. I want you, Janine, to just express how you're doing, what's happening. I know the world seems to be, it's just so many things in the world. I can't imagine 40 years. I can't imagine, how I would do that. But I think that when you went in, knowing your beliefs and knowing who you are and knowing what you're doing and knowing what's happening. So you had to be strong and courageous. So what I want to do, Janine, is I want to kind of open up the floor for you, and I want to also this seems like it's a pretty close-knit group here that we're talking to, and give them an opportunity just to listen to your story, because I want you to tell your story, because I can sit here and go over this, but I really want you to share your story, because that's what it's all about, so they can hear your story. I remember, I'm rambling on, but I just want to remember the time when you came to San Diego, to the Malcolm X Library, you and Janet and Pam Africa, and the room was full of people, young people. A lot of these young people were not even born, I mean, but they knew about you because we talked about the Move Now. We talked about political prisoners. We Black August. We focus on August of 1978. We focus on the bombing of Move. So they knew it, but in order to see it and to hear it, that was just a very fascinating thing for me. I mean, it was just it's like, oh wow. And then the way you guys are just so. I mean, it's like you know you're so firm. The way you do it. But anyway, I will let you go into that because that's really really exciting. So, Janine, why don't you take us out, give us that journey. Tell us your story, and also when you get to that, tell us how being in prison impacted your life. How it impacts prisoners. World. Throughout the U.S. Let us know. Tell us.
Okay, so on the move, as Gloria says, my name is Janine Africa. I am Minister of Education for the for John Africa's Move organization, and I am one of the Move Nine, and I did 41 years in prison for a crime I did not commit. I spent 41 years in prison, as John Africa said, for giving this system the truth, and they gave me a prison cell. I met Move when I was 17. I had married young, had a child, and it was just a lot for me. I didn't realize it, but I couldn't take it. I was having problems with my throat. My throat would close up. I didn't know what it was. So I went to doctor after doctor after doctor, test after test after test, and they all told me there was nothing wrong with me. And that the only thing they would do is give me some drugs. And I just felt so hopeless and despondent because I'm like, nobody can help me. What good is drugs? I didn't want to be dependent on drugs. So I didn't know what to do. And then one day I was walking in West Philadelphia and I heard these voices over a loud bullhorn. And I followed the voices and I came to the 16th district. And these people were protesting outside of the 16th district. And so, of course, it caught my attention. But what really impressed me and drew me in was the women. People are used to seeing men take positions like that and be out there demonstrating, but I wasn't used to seeing women do this. And it not just the women speaking, it was the way they were speaking. It was so confident and just out there, just as the men, and I was just so amazed because I was feeling so down and weak and bad about myself. And when I saw these women, I was like, I would love to be like that. I would love that because the confidence was just coming out of it. So I stayed until the end of the demonstration, and I'll never forget, it was Mumia Africa, came over to me and asked me my name and started talking to me, and she told me about their weekly study sessions that they had outside of their home every Thursday. So I came to one and I started listening, and when I heard the teaching of John Africa, it just really hit something inside of me that it made me, I kept coming back week after week after week. And then I started coming around to wash cars with Move. And then I started going to demonstrations with Move. And it just went on from there. And I just started getting closer and closer and closer. And then I was eventually invited into the house to have meetings with the family, as a family. And it just made me feel so confident and strong. And I just felt so good about myself. And eventually, John Africa made me a Move member. And we were having a family meeting, and one day John Africa just came over to me and he asked me how was I doing, and I said, I'm doing great, I'm doing good. And he said, how's your throat? And I'm like, my throat? And I was like, oh my God. I didn't even realize I stopped having those attacks where I used to have attacks where my throat would close up, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't eat. And I didn't even realize that after being around Move and John Africa, it went away, completely away. And it was just things like that that just made me realize the power of John Africa's teaching. And that just drew me in even more. And I just got involved in Move. And let me just make it clear, I was not a politically conscious person. You know, some people have that interest and want to, you know, do something about the wrongs that's going on. I wasn't that kind of person. You know, the strength that people see in me, the commitment to fight this system is coming from John Africa, from John Africa's teaching. I had no concern for the condition of the world until I met John Africa. And now I'm involved in it. It's my life, you know, and John Africa had moved out there confronting the dirty politicians, the zoos, the prostitution of the animals, the polluting of the water with the 3 Mile Island and places like that. And that was our work. And because John Africa got the truth, we were really exposing this system. And what they did was the politicians involved the police, which is how all of this started, the escalation. They would bring the police in and order the police to jump us, beat us, jail us, even though we have a right to demonstrate, you know, and that's how it snowballed. It just snowballed from every demonstration. The police would be called and they would jump on Move people, arrest us. And so that's where it escalated to the point where 1976, March 1976, some of our family was coming home from prison and we were out greeting them. We came out on our sidewalk in front of our house and was greeting our sisters and brothers that came out from prison. And as we're out there greeting them, we noticed cop cars pulling up with no lights on, just slowly pulling up on the other side of the street. And the cop got out and came over to Chucky and said, we got a report of a fight out here. And he said, no, it's no fight. It's just us greeting our family home from prison. And so we kept on going and the cop wouldn't leave. He said, I got a call about a disturbance. He said, no, it's just Move people greeting Move people home from prison. And we turned away and kept engaging with each other. And then finally he got real nasty. He said, I said, I got a call about a disturbance. And finally Chucky said, what I said, there's no fight, no disturbance. It's just us greeting our families. And the minute he said that, them cops came out swinging. And at the time I was standing in front of my husband, Phil Africa, and the cops, to get to him, threw me down on the ground and I was holding my 3-week-old baby Life. And it crushed his head. And they just stomped over me and that crushed his head. And I didn't know what was going on. When I got up and saw the baby's head, I just ran into the house, ran down the basement, and I just was there holding the baby and they found me. And, you know, of course they tried to deny it and say that there was no baby, but the neighbors came out and told the news media, no, there was a baby. We just saw that baby the other day. So when they couldn't get away with that, they tried to say the baby was sick or diseased. And they said, no, we saw the baby. We touched the baby. That baby was healthy. So from that night, our sisters and brothers was arrested. 3 of our brothers was beat badly, severely, broken arms, busted heads. And they went in front of the judge, Judge Myrna Marshall, and they told her about the baby that was murdered. And she said, well, produce the baby's body. And, you know, we knew better than that, because we knew, had we given them my baby, they would have said the baby didn't exist, or they would have made up some other reason that the baby had died. So the family sent me away for the day. And while I was away, they brought in clergymen, news reporters, state representatives, councilmen, brought them in the house and let them see the body of the baby. And they took pictures. And so when our family went back to court, they presented the pictures to the judge. And she said, pictures aren't enough for me to charge anybody. Now, that's just one incident. They also caused my sister Rhonda Africa to lose her baby. They beat her, slammed her belly first into the holding cell benches when she was 8 months pregnant, causing her to deliver the baby, and the baby lived for a few seconds and died. You know, they beat my sister Janet and Lee Singh, who were pregnant, caused them to miscarry. They held my sister Alberta down, spread eagle, while a female officer kicked her continuously in the vagina and caused her to miscarriage. And it was just escalating and escalating. And finally, we got a call from somebody down City Hall, and they told us that the city was planning a full-scale attack or move, and they were planning on killing us. So that is what led up to May 20th, 1977, because we said, okay, whatever you're going to do, you're going to have to do it out in the open, because all this time they was beating us in closed courtrooms, coming out 3 a.m. So people weren't seeing it. So we said, this time, whatever you're going to do to move, you're going to do it out in the open for the whole world to see, which is why we made the platform, came out in the khakis with what they saw as weapons, and it drew worldwide attention. And that was the year-long siege. So finally, because of that, you know, Rizzo was getting a lot of pressure on him for this siege. He came up with this agreement, because, you know, they put up a starvation blockade around our house for 3 months. And people was really getting upset. They like, there's pregnant women in there, there's breastfeeding babies, you know, men and women and animals, and we just can't tolerate this. Because what they did was the people in the city, when they heard Rizzo was going to put up a starvation blockade, they swarmed us with as much food and water as they could get. But they were getting messed up, because they was like, they're going to run out of food and water, and we can't sit by and have this. So because Rizzo was getting a lot of pressure on him, he said he was going to make an agreement with us. If we handed over the weapons and submitted to an arrest, then they would take the police out of the neighborhood. And we said, well, you release our sisters and brothers who's unjustly in prison, we'll hand over the weapons, we'll submit to the arrest process, and that'll be that. You know, and they said, well, you have to get rid of your animals. And we said, we'll find homes for all of them except the puppies. And we will always keep our house in Powelton Village, because it's like a school. They agreed to that. They said, but all of y'all can't live there. We said, that's fine. So they released our sisters and brothers, and we turned over the weapons that was in the house. The cops came in, they had the metal detectors, they searched from top to bottom, yards, everything. And they filmed the whole process of the weapons. And what made them mad was every weapon that we handed to them was inoperable. And that just incensed them, because they felt like we held them off for a whole year with what they thought was weapons, and it wasn't. But that was the whole point John Africa was making. Those weapons was a deterrent, just a deterrent, because as long as they felt like we could protect ourselves, they weren't going to come and attack us like they've been doing. So we handed over all the so-called weapons. And then that's what led up to August 8th, because when they felt like we didn't have no weapons to defend ourselves, they reneged on everything in the agreement, told us we had to be out of that house in 30 days. And we was like, well, a lawyer came, he said, we're going to fight this in court. And they said, well, y'all have to appear in court. We said, no, that was part of your agreement. The city told us they did never want more people to come back to the courtrooms because we was tying their court system up, causing them thousands and thousands of dollars. We said, according to your agreement, we're not supposed to come in your courts anymore. They said, no, we ain't accepting no lawyers, nobody. We want y'all in court. We said, no, we're not coming in because according to your agreement, we're not supposed to come to court. So the long story short, they just really wanted to kill us. And when they felt like we didn't have those weapons and we were defenseless, that's what they did August 8th. They came at us with everything they had. Over 500 cops and firemen, anti-tank missile, M14s, everything you could think of. They came, deluge hoses, not just fire hoses, deluge hoses mounted up on these stands. With the force was so strong, we had 6 foot tall railroad ties that we made the fence out of. That water was picking those railroad ties up and throwing them back in the house like toothpicks. That's how powerful the water force was. They shot in gallon after gallon of water, tear gas, smoke bombs, drilled a hole in the first floor so that they could see us because we were all in this basement, had cops pointing rifles through this hole, cops lined up on all sides of the house that was facing the streets because they had punched out the windows through the whole house, was literally tearing the house down on top of us. And they sent their little warning, move, this is America, come out. And of course we said, we're not coming out so you can kill us. They started the attack and they shot so many rounds in that house that they tore the pillars up. I was holding my baby and I was sitting there watching the sparks from the bullets hitting the walls beside me. You could see them, hitting. And the smoke was so thick, I couldn't even see the hand in front of my face. I couldn't even see my baby anymore. And at one point, I could hear one of the men saying, get the women and kids out. And I don't know how I made it to the steps to get out because couldn't see anything. And we got out there and got arrested. When I got arrested, I didn't see nobody else. And they snatched my baby from me and I had to let him go because they was pulling him by his legs and stuff. They were going to hurt him. So I let him go. I let him take him and got roughed up and arrested. And when I got down to the roundhouse, I saw these 2 cops in front of my cell and they was talking about somebody got shot in the back of the head and the bullet traveled down and he was dead. So because I didn't see anybody else, I thought they was talking about one of the move people in the house. And I just snapped out and I'm hollering at them, telling them, how they killed my family. And then I hear one of my sisters down the hall and they called me and they said that they were all right. Everybody was all right. And I calmed down. But they were talking about Officer Ramp. They said out of their own mouths, he got shot in the back of the head and the bullet traveled downward. He was facing us. He was up on street level. We was in the basement. So now how did we shoot him and kill him? That's impossible. But because we came out alive, they gave us the body. And we, of course, was convicted and sentenced to 30 to 100 years each. And Judge Malmuth, he was the bench judge, thought it was a joke. He said, you know, they always saying they're a family, so I'm obliging them and sentencing them as a family. And that's how he gave all of us 30 to 100 years for the shooting of one cop that was shot with one bullet from one gun. And we went into that prison. And when we went in that prison, we just held on to our belief. We wasn't compromising. We wasn't letting them break us. We was determined to just keep fighting, keep going strong. And that's what we did for 41 years. You know, we were eligible for parole after 30 years in 2008. They gave us hit after hit after hit. And they played these mind games. They would give the women 1 year hit, 2 year hit, 3 year hit, but they was giving the men just 1 year hit. They was trying to make us feel like, yeah, you're protecting the men, but they're not protecting you. They was playing mind games, you know, and but we said it didn't matter because we were staying committed to John Africa, to this revolution, and it didn't matter what they said, what they did. We were not breaking and turning away from our belief. And that carried us for 41 years. And that carried us through May 13th. You know, we found out about May 13th when we were in the RHU, the restricted housing unit. We were in the section where you don't get any newspapers, you don't see a TV, and you only get a phone call when they decide to give you a phone call. And one day, the lieutenant came to each of our cell, opened the door, and said, Sue, your son is dead, and shut the door back. Consuela, your daughters are dead. Shut the door back. And right down the line. That's all they said. No explanation, nothing. So we're still like, what is going on? We don't know what's going on. And what happened was there were girls on the campus that were supporters. They deliberately got misconducts that would make them come to the RHU, and they smuggled in newspaper articles about the bombing, smuggled them in and got them to us, to ourselves. And that's how we found out what Philadelphia did to our family, what Mayor Good did to our family, that way. And even with that, the procedure in prison is when there's a death in the family, the chaplain is supposed to come to you and talk to you and give you a phone call for you to talk to somebody, find out what's going on. They never did that with us. Like I said, all they did was come to ourselves and said our children were dead and left us like that. Left us like that. And it was our belief. And my sister Alberta, who is John Africa's wife, one of the first MOVE members that just held us all together. She was there to just keep us steadfast and close. And she helped pull us through with John Africa's teaching through one of the worst times in my life. That was, to me, was worse than August 8th.
Janine, I know
Yeah.
this is very difficult for you, and I just want to remind people that May 13th, 1985 is when the Philadelphia police, on the direction of Mayor Good, right, dropped a
Yeah.
bomb on the community there. And the impact on you, because I believe you had your son, Phil,
Yes, my son.
was
Yes.
killed in that. And the thing about, women, I mean, I know that, that Debbie actually had her son there. Actually, I ordered Mike Africa's book, and I read that, and he told me a lot. He in his book he described a lot of the things that he was going through, but he also described that even though the MOVE organization stayed together and protected the children, and even though there was he maintained that strength, and you and Janine and Debbie and all of you maintain that strength, because I'm sure there were times, while you were in prison, like you were saying, I remember, the 30 years. I say, well, this is, this is a time for them to be paroled, because this is your 30 years. That's just when you can be paroled. And then when you were denied parole, I mean, one of the things that I heard is that, if you can renounce the MOVE, right, and do that, see, you held on strong to your beliefs. I mean, and that's the part of the sacrifice that you make, and we're out here free the MOVE mind, all that. I mean, we're doing this, but it's just the strength. I mean, there's a it's not something that is Mumia has that same drive. I mean, political prisoners are not the same as just, I mean, I see all prisoners as political prisoners because of this corrupt system that we live in. But when you're talking about political prisoners and prisoners who are in prison because of what they believe, and the thing about it is that what you believe wasn't harming anybody. I mean, it wasn't harming anybody. So it's like, why would you think that the state, that Philadelphia, would do this to this organization, which is only that is not, causing any harm? Why do you have to, why the fight? Because you were, what's the reason behind that? Have you?
Well, what it is, this system has duped people into believing you can't beat the system. This is the best you have, and to accept it. And Janine Africa teach and has shown, no, this isn't the best system that you can have, and you don't have to accept it, because you can lead yourself. You can take care of yourself. And this system is corrupt. It don't care about you. All they want to do is prostitute your strength, have you work for them as you're working every day, breaking your back just to make ends meet. And they're taking your money, and they're having 2 and 3 vacation homes, sending their kids to different colleges, while you are working your butt off.
Well, somebody who needs to mute, and I'm going to just ask this question for the people that are here. Just a minute. I want to ask if you could turn on your video so that when we're talking we can see this. If you feel comfortable to turn on your video so that Janine could see who's in the room. I mean, it just gives it a little bit more intimacy. It's a few of us here. I see it's like about 17 people on, and just turn on your videos, because I think it's so important that we hear the story. I mean, if we think about it, it's the women prisoners. I mean, it's like, why are women incarcerated? It's like, what's the story behind that? I mean, women are serving longer times in prison, in prisons, in jails. I mean, they're not even equipped to take care of the needs of women. Because I know during the years, I know that there were calls for us because, different, women have different needs than the men. I mean, you have to have, breast exams, or, female issues. It's being in prison. I mean, it's like all these things. It's the impact. All these things that impacts you. And these women spent 40 years. And from what I remember when you were here in San Diego, I mean, you were talking about that you were supporting other women there. I mean, encouraging them to eat the right food. Fought about the prison food, the prison medicine, and the care. And I know that in some prisons they have, daycare, they have child care centers, because when women are in prison, it affects the whole family. I mean, it does, because children are being taken away from women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because I was reading Mike Jr.'s book, and it's like, and all the other things that kind of like put things together, how important it is. So I just want to get your views on, the impacts of women being incarcerated, because of the amount of women in prison. Like some people say, oh, women, it's only like 10%, but it's growing. It's growing significantly. More and more women are being in prison. More and more women are homeless. When our men go to prison, that's an income that's just lost. I mean, it's like even just the protection part, and it's like you and women are on the street, homeless, drug infestation. It's all kinds of things that I see, that I know you're picking up on. But what would you say is, the most impactful thing that affects women in prison? Some that you've already, talked about, like, um, uh, just getting the medical care, getting the food, getting the checkups, because a lot of times you complain about maybe stomach cramps. I mean, even when you talk about, pregnant women, because they're saying a lot of the women that come in are pregnant, and a lot of the women are already distressed when they come in, and it's just more stressful when they get in there. But you and Janine and Debbie, you're the strong women. You supported women. In what ways did you support women? And in what ways that did you do that while you were in prison? I think you were talking about a garden. Yeah.
Well, the thing is we would set an example, and this is something that a lot of women, even women that we didn't even really associate with, would say about us. Like, they knew our situation, and they said every day they would see us, we would speak, have a smile on our face, and they were saying, how could y'all be that way with the time you have? And they said it just would make them feel encouraged and strong. Because some of them would say, I was having a bad day, feeling sorry for myself, and I see y'all, and y'all just up and going and staying the same and kind to people. And they said, how can I complain when y'all are like this? So they would follow our example, and some of them say would just give them strength to just do what they had to do. Our example would keep them from getting involved in things that they shouldn't have in prison. The holidays are one of the worst times in prison. It's bad on the streets, but in prison it's intensified. You have women that miss their children, women that didn't have money to send their children anything for the holidays. And it's a high suicide rate in the prisons at that time. So what me and my sisters would do was, on the holidays, we would take our money, go to the commissary, and buy holiday things. And we would make sure we gave every woman in that prison something. Even if it was just one little thing, we would make sure every woman got something on that holiday. And a lot of them would come back and they would tell us that they was thinking about suicide, especially at Christmas, or just really bad. And when we would knock on their cell door and give them that gift, they said it made them feel so good that it just brought them up out of that darkness. This is the kind of example that Janine Africa instilled in us, and we gave it to them. We discouraged the bullying, the prejudice. We wouldn't allow the Black girls to intimidate and bully the white girls, and vice versa. We would not encourage that. So our example stopped a lot of things that could have happened bad in prison, and the impact of women in prison is that the men don't see women as a threat. So a lot of things that women need is ignored because they don't care, because they're not afraid of women rioting or attacking the guards. They're not afraid of that. And in the state prison, a lot of the officers there were men. That's something people don't know. When we first came up to the state prison, there were more females. The females worked the actual floors where the women were housed. But as time went on, that it changed. They had men up there working the floors, coming in your rooms at night to do security checks while you're asleep in the bed and all of that. So they weren't afraid of the women rebelling or, hitting one of them guards. So women get ignored a lot in the prisons because they don't care. A lot of the things they do for men is because they want to keep them men kind of appeased, because it's a different thing when them guards walk the blocks in the men prisons, because some of them men will just come up and knock them guards out. The guards say something stupid, wrong to the men, some of the men knock them out. But they didn't fear that with women. So women got the short end of the stick because they didn't care what happened to women in prison, because they don't care about the men either. But to keep themselves safe, they would give the men certain things and treat them in a certain way so that they would not get attacked. And the impact is, like you said, what about the children that's left out there? Some children are fortunate to have a grandmom, but what about the children that don't have a grandmom? They're going in those foster cares, and let's face it, some of the people that's doing the fostering is just to get paid. They don't take care of the children. They don't care about the children, and we helped in that aspect. Ramona, Alberta, and Merle worked in the library and in the law library, and they would take the women, listen to their situation, and file the right papers for them to get their children back. Because what was happening is a lot of the children, they were putting them in foster care, but as the mother was there and once she got sentenced, they were putting the children up for adoption. And so the women were coming into the law library, and Ramona, Alberta, and Merle was directing them to the right papers, the right courts to file, and they saved a lot of women's children like that. This is the work that Move Women were doing in those prisons, because that was our job, to get in there and help people. It didn't matter that we were in prison. The work of Move didn't stop just because we were behind prison walls. And so, and like I said, other than that, just to encourage women to care about themselves and to try to do things where they don't have to be in them situations anymore. That's the kind of stuff that we did in those prisons. We just gave them women what John Africa gave us, and it did change a lot. The influence was so impacting in there that a lot of the officers admitted and told our brothers when they came to get us that they were glad we were being discharged and released, but they were going to be sad to see us go, because they said your sisters did a lot for these women in prison. So, it's a serious situation. And the thing of it is officials and people like that don't care about how this impacts the community. They don't care about you. They don't care about your children. They don't care. Them politicians only say that kind of stuff when it's time for election. All right. Then they want to get out there and talk about prison reform and all, but they don't care, Gloria. All they care about is the money. Them prisons are just warehouses, money-making industries. That's all they care about. And that's why they're going to stay filled, because they're making money. They're making money. They don't care about crime. They don't. They don't care about crime because those officials commit more crime than the people on the street. They don't care about crime. But it's like cattle. Those prisons are cattle farms. They got plenty of people to fill them. Plenty of people to fill them. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be available. Just have to be available. And that is what it is.
I just want to let the people listening here to know that 58% of the women who are imprisoned, have minor children. That they do, and they're single women with minor children. And also, you didn't mention this, but this was a survey did by the government. It says that while incarcerated, women are 3 times likely. Men can get sexually assaulted too, but women are most likely to get sexually assaulted in prison, and it's just and by prison staff, especially in prison staff. So it's just like, I guess you're being there. I mean, were you and Janine and Debbie together the whole time? And I just want to remind people that Merle passed away early, right?
Under suspicious circumstances. They even put that on their report. Suspicious circumstances. And people need to know that is one of their tactics when they want to get rid of somebody, and it is a tactic they use on political prisoners, especially political prisoners that they see as a big influence to people. Phil Africa, Merle.
Phil Africa is your
my
partner,
husband.
right?
So
that's really horrible. I mean,
so the list goes on. They use that. I mean, look at Mumia. They really did the same to Delbert because they messed him up so bad, took his health so bad that when he came out and we took him to a doctor out here on the streets, the doctor started crying because he said he can't believe what they did to Delbert, what they did that they shouldn't have, and what they didn't do that they should have done. They said it was no way he should have gotten sick like that. His condition should not have been like that. Chucky. I mean, just go down, look at all of your what is seen as high profile political prisoners, and you see the pattern that they're all getting these terminal illnesses.
Right.
We call it medical assassination. A medical assassination. And because now they're trying to do the same to Mumia. They tried to do the same to Leonard Peltier. It just goes on and on because that's how they do it. They can't use guns and bombs and things anymore. So they go this way. They go this way, and people don't really see it as being attacked because you feel like, well, they got sick and the doctors tried this. No, you're not going to convince me that all these political prisoners are getting terminal illnesses like this. You're not going to convince me of that. You're at their mercy. You don't know what they do with your food, with the different things that they give you. You don't know. And then to ignore it like they did Mumia. He had hepatitis C, and they refused to treat him and said he can't get treatment until his liver gets.
They call it death by incarceration too. I think that Mumia came up with that term, because and it's incredible because people on the outside, that's what we need to talk about. People on the outside feel that you get the better medical care in prison because out here we we're at the mercy. It's like the medical care, but when you're in prison, when you're out here, I think at least you can, go to the hospital and fight and try to fight. But when you're in prison, you have to depend on someone. If you're in pain,
Yeah.
they can say, well, just hold out or whatever. You hear so many horror stories about
It is.
what's happening.
It is.
And for women, they have, I'm trying to make those words. We, as women, we have different, types of illnesses, like, our female, problems. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
the women come into prison probably damaged. And if
Mm-hmm.
those things don't get taken care of, I mean, their lifespan is really cut short. I mean, the lifespan of women is even less than the men, even though they're saying, well, women is only 10%. But it's really a horrible thing because that's not a priority, And I think that for political prisoners, of course, they can probably use that against you and let you suffer, And so it's just so much. So I'm just kind of thinking about this because, I mean, I mean, I kind of agree with some of the women that were there. Your strength, the way you carried yourself. Where did you get that from? I mean, how did you, day by day, every day, and us out here? I mean, how did you, how did you maintain? How did you, it's how did you do that? I mean, that 40 years. Okay, when I found out about the how I found out about the Move 9, I found out through reading Mumia's book. Okay, I found out about Mumia, and he was already 10 years in prison
Mm-hmm.
when I found out about him. I went to, actually, Pam Africa came to San Diego, and they had a forum at St. Rita's. People on the phone know St. Rita's church or whatever there. And I went there, and that's when I got Mumia's book, Life from Death Row. And I read about that. And I'm thinking, like, where have I been? Because I've been active, politically active, majority of my life. I'm from the South, so I know about racism and oppression and all this. And, so and the political prisoners, I mean, prisoners really wasn't a big thing with me, but I learned from Mumia. I learned about him, his reporting on the move and his activity, his essays. I think I gave you a book of essays from Mumia. I start collecting them. So to me, I'm like, I'm late, So when I'm looking at these young Panthers and these young people, I'm saying it's never too late to start your activism.
No, it's
To
not.
start doing things, and it's how important it is for us to, to focus and mobilize, to get together to free our remaining political prisoners, and basically to free them all, but especially our elders, because they
Mm-hmm.
have put up such a sacrifice, and it's like, I'm sure for the younger people, they said, you've been doing this, Gloria, for how many years? And people come up to you, you've been doing this for how many years? And Mumia is still in prison. And even me on the phone call, you heard me on the phone call, I'm saying, yeah, Mumia's birthday is coming up, but what can we do to free him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, 20 years ago, 30 years ago with Asada, people went in and broke in and got her out. I mean, and actually, I talked, besides you guys coming, Jalil Mataquin came here and he spoke at San Diego State, and also Sekou Odinga came here and he spoke to us about, supporting political prisoners, writing to them, doing this, but mainly to educate people that there are political prisoners, because the system tells you, oh, we don't have political prisoners. I mean, everybody's in there because they've done something. So sometimes that gets into your mind. But to support political prisoners, as you are doing right now, what is it, do you think, that we should tell our youth on, how to, I mean, what can we do? I mean, I know that being in solidarity, working together, getting these groups together in numbers, and but what would your advice be on how to get to really deeply, affect young people to, to really mobilize to free our existing political prisoners?
Well, for one thing, they have to know that it's not going to happen fast. And I think that's what discourages people a lot, because when they do something, they be like, well, I've been out there, I demonstrated, it's been 10 years, and they feel like it's not getting anywhere. But this is a ongoing fight. And you talking about battling the David and Goliath. You talking about a battle here. It's a battle, and they have to understand that it won't stop. You can't stop. And they got to be just encouraged with the fact that when you know you're doing what's right, you just have to use that and be encouraged and fueled by it, and you don't stop. You know, think about where would people be if the slaves stopped and gave up? You know, they didn't see an end in sight. They didn't know what was going to come down the line for them, but they wouldn't stop. You know, they just kept finding ways and kept pushing and struggling and just kept going and going and going, and they didn't give up. And this is no different. You just can't give up. You can't stop. You know, John Africa told us we are victorious. The fact that we are fighting makes us victorious, because this system has not stopped us. And that's just how it is. And people, I mean, I understand, understand when they don't see something after a certain amount of time, people start getting like, you know, I've been doing this for so long. But the fight for life, for freedom, is ongoing. And you just have to understand that and do what you can, no matter how things appear. Because like John have to teach us, when you're doing what's right, no matter how hopeless things may yet seem, the power of righteousness will never betray you. And just look at it. I mean, just look at it. What would happen if the people over here didn't fight in their revolution against Britain and England? They didn't stop. And that, I mean, you just, when you feel like you're doing what's right, you can't stop. And young people have to realize that if you don't keep fighting, things are not going to get better. They're getting worse.
That's right.
They are getting worse. And you don't have to be out on the street demonstrating or, you know, doing what they feel like they see revolutionaries do. Because I always tell people, the prison we was in Muncie, it was only 9 of us there at one time. And the rest of the prison was people who felt like they just, you know, was going about their lives, going about their business. So it wasn't just because we were fighting for what's right that put us in prison. The prisons are full of everybody. Everybody. They weren't out on the corner demonstrating against Rizzo or whoever else out there, but they still ended up in prison because being quiet is not going to protect you. This system don't care about life, which is why John Africa formed the MOVE organization, because somebody got to fight them. What are you going to do? Somebody got to tell them enough is enough and keep going. And people just have to understand. I mean, everybody want to have a nice life and just live. But as long as this system exists, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're going to keep polluting your water, polluting the soil, keep locking people up, keep drugs infiltrated in the... Come on, you know where these drugs are coming from. They're making sure drugs stay in the neighborhood. They are making sure of that. How can they know to go bust John on the corner selling his little nickel bags of drugs, but you can't bust a boatload of drugs coming in on skids of drugs? You can't find that, but you can find this person on the corner selling little drugs out of his pocket. Come on, they are making sure that the drugs stay in the neighborhood the same way the Europeans made sure the Indians got plenty of whiskey. The same thing. It's the same thing. And, you know, I mean, you know, would have been nice if we could have just lived our lives and not have to go through this, but that's not going to happen. And people going to have to understand that it's not going to happen. You have to fight this demon, this monster that's hurting everybody. Everybody, white, black, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, everybody's suffering. Everybody.
Yeah, Janine, I really appreciate your your frankness, your honesty. I just want to. It's 8 o'clock now. It's after 8. I just want to give these participants here an opportunity if they would like to ask the question or if they have any concerns. I don't know how much they know about the Move Nine, but there's a lot of books out there. When you're Googling on the internet, I mean, you have to be real specific because different things will pop up. So that's why I think you should hear the story from from the source. And I think you should read the books from the source. And I think you should, try to get your information by reading rather than Googling. But, there's a lot of information, a lot of YouTubes, a lot of different information online that you can get. And you can go to Jericho
Mhm.
movement to find out about other political prisoners. You can, go to specific sites that you can go to find out the truth about what's going on. And there's books to read. So I'm going to
There is
open up. Mhm.
there is a podcast out called
Okay.
Move, the American Tragedy, the untold story of American tragedy. And it is Move people actually doing the talking on this. It's not a secondhand book or whatever. It is John Africa's Move organization that we're actually telling our story on it. And it's on the Amazon
Okay.
that produced it. So, they say it's doing good. So if people are interested, they can go online and look that up. It's the untold story of an American tragedy.
Okay. And we can probably we can post some other links for them to go to because just Googling. But so I'm going to open it up. We maybe is it okay, Storm, to have like maybe another maybe 10 or 15 minutes just in case someone wants to ask some questions or are concerned about the topic that we're talking about, the impact of
Absolutely.
women, the impact that imprisonment has on women. Yes.
Yes. Does anybody have any questions or want to share something?
Comments. I'm looking through the room. Okay. I think this is a little bit different from the other educationals that we're opening up for people to make comments. But it is. I mean, you can find out about oh, here's someone. You want to go ahead and take that? I think it's what I think I see. I
Yes.
kind of
Black
lost him.
Popeye, I knew you had a question for us. What's your comment?
Right on. First of all, how you doing, Gloria? Nice to see you again. Nice to see you doing well. And comrade Janine, I really appreciate the message that you're getting out and the information that you've given us. My question is coming from a defense-minded individual. What was the organization's policy on defense? Or did you guys embrace a full, peaceful, non-violent mantra?
Well, the thing that John Africa teach us is that self-defense is a God-given right. And that was one of the things we told them May 20th when they came surrounded the house. We said, if you come at us with fists, we'll come back at fists. If you come at us with blackjacks, we're coming back with blackjacks. If you come at us with guns, we coming back with guns. We aren't violent. Violence is if somebody comes up and punch you in the face. That's violent. But it is also encouraging it if you just keep letting them punch you in the face. They walk up to you and keep punching you in the face or choking you. You have to defend yourself. That is not violent, to defend yourself, to protect your life. I think a lot of people are confused about that. But, if somebody got their hands around your throat, that God-given instinct is going to get you to defend yourself and protect yourself. And that is what MOVE is about. We're not going out attacking you. We're not going out trying to start nothing, but we will defend ourselves if you come at us like that. That is a God-given right to defend yourself.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Do others have questions? So I just want to share a little bit that I had the opportunity to speak to Miss Janine the other day, and I was just struck by her depth and warmth, and just even the little bit of story that she shared with me at that time. And I had heard, about the Move 9 and what happened before, but it was just, it's such a deep story, and that your spirit, you kept going and others kept going and staying committed to what you had already decided to do with your lives. And Chairman War, who just joined in, my favorite discussion he gives is about being principled. And I really feel like you all embodied that. You stayed, you had your principles, and you stuck to them. And a lot of times, Miss Gloria was kind of talking about how it is on the outside, that people are just like, oh, going about things and not realizing many of us are not principled, right? We don't decide on something and stay committed to that no matter what happens. And you guys were just faced with so many things, but you remained principled. So if I could ask people to take something away from today, other than having a different perspective about the lives of prisoners, it would be, whatever your thinking is, whatever you have researched, you're committed to, you're saying, this is going to be my way of life, I'm going to be committed to the community, or whatever it is, be principled in that. Don't let people come and tell you anything and just shake your belief system.
That was well said. I'm looking at Janine, and I'm just like, I think it's really awesome, because it seems like you took care of the women there, but also you took care of yourself. Because I know that one of the things that I was reading about our brother Delbert, who passed away, not too long after he was released, that they wanted to, give him, not want to grant him parole because he was against them cutting his hair off, and he fought for that. He fought to say, no, you're not going to, cut off my hair. The same thing happened with Mumia. It takes a lot of strength to fight for what you believe in. I mean, at the time that Sekou Odinga came to San Diego, on the panel was two, I don't know if you guys remember, but Aaron, and it was the San Diego 33 that was fighting. They were arrested or detained for gang violence. And what happened is Aaron was saying that, they were trying to convince him to sign, to say, okay, I did. They were saying, well, if you do this, you only get 10 years or you only get 15 years. But he held on. He held on to his say, I'm not a gang member, because they were saying, even if you are associated or seen with a gang member, you can be detained and you can get a whole lot of time. And he stuck with that, and it worked out for him because he did not let them convince him to say, okay, I'll sign and take the 10 years. He said, I couldn't imagine myself being in there. So it's like, you have to stand to your principles, even if you're scared, even if you think that something, you have to say, no, I didn't do it. So many people will say, oh, well, okay, I'll admit I did it. No, stick to your principles. And that's so important. I think I saw another hand up. Did I see another hand up?
Amber?
Hello. So sorry, I rose my hand way too soon. I did have a question. I just want to say also thank you. Everything that you guys have been sharing has been really, really insightful. Um, I kind of have a question based off um more of your experience while incarcerated. And I, as an individual, have just want to base my future off working with those infected by the incarcerational system, more particularly in gang settings, just because that's what affected me in my community. But I was just really curious about if you, like yourself, what resources or forms of education did you wish that you would have had to make um I don't know, just what other forms of education did you wish that you had access to while incarcerated by chance?
Well, my teaching, John Africa's teaching, my belief really informed and equipped us with everything we needed. You know, it allowed us to handle any situation effectively. And that's what kept us going. You know, it's hard for me to, I guess, for you to understand how powerful John Africa teaching is and how rounded it is. And I mean, it carried us, it was no situation that we couldn't handle, none whatsoever, you know. And it allowed us to be able to point the other women in the right direction for things that they needed to deal with. Like I said, with the situation with fighting for their children, the knowledge that we have from John Africa's teaching allowed us to be able to show them this is what you need to do. This is what you need to get involved in. So, you know, I mean, it might have been things we needed to learn. Well, like we had to learn how to use a computer, you know, because there were certain things we had to research to be able to find things for the women. But whatever we needed to do, we was able to get hold of in there. And that is the thing that's encouraged, that we encourage them. You have to focus on things that you will need to help yourself either get out, help your children, or, you know, help get resources, because a lot of the women in there didn't even know about different programs and things that they could use for funding for their children, you know, because there were some groups that would come in and they would get information where they could help with like finances for some of the women's children, or during the holidays, make sure their children got certain gifts and things like that. So we had to help them, direct them to those different places so that they could learn how to take care of themselves and their children while they were in prison. And that's really important. And a lot of people don't get in there. They're not informed on the resources that are available to them. And I think that's one of the most important things. If people could get inside of those prisons, volunteers or whatever, that's really needed. People like that can get in there and direct them women to resources that will help them. Because there's, you'd be surprised at what those women aren't being offered, that they don't even know that should be offered to them, that could really impact their release and their children. You know, there's things out there that's just not being made known to them. So in that aspect, you know, we had to find out things like that so that we could get them to those things. But that's really important, if we could get a lot more people that could get inside those prisons, and a lot more people that could set up housing and jobs and things like that for women when they come out. a lot of people are just left stranded. They're left stranded, and some of the women that have gotten out of prison have really did the work to get housing like that. Those are some of the main things that is really important, and that we did have to learn those things to try to help those women with that, because you had to do a lot of research, because they don't make it easy. They don't make it easy, but those are the things that we did have to learn about, using the computer and being able to research resources for the women and their children, and but
Yeah, I just want to just check with Storm. I just wanted to, I don't see any more hands there, but just want to make an announcement. April 24th is Mumia's 71st birthday, and I've been kind of working with the mobilization for Mumia, and just like we did last year, and just like we've done in between, we in Philadelphia, they're going to do a a live podcast on some events during Mumia's birthday, and I'm going to get more of that information there. It's a like just like Mumia has said that birthdays are not really a celebration. It's really just just to show Mumia that we're there. And what we usually do is we usually bring folks together, and we talk, listen to some of Mumia's speeches, maybe look at a video, and then we sign a card and send it to Mumia, just to let him know that we're still out there and we're still supporting him. And we've done this for on his anniversary in December. We've sent cards to all political prisoners. We do stuff like that. It's just to let them know we're out here, and that's something that Sekou Odinga says, is that when they get a letter, when they get confirmation, it just confirms that that people are still aware they're there, and it just gives them that sense of that we're thinking, we're working. Because sometimes I'm working out, I'm not doing enough. What is it going to take? But they're working all the time, trying to get more information. So that's going to be, his birthday is April 24th, and I will send an email to Storm and to Robert and forward it to you. And also the mobilization for Mumia, that Zoom call, that's available for anybody. It's opened up for anybody. So I can send you I can send Storm and Robert the information if you want to join that, because they're talking about not just Mumia. Okay, we're here to free all of them, but they have a whole list, and they have different groups that come in and talk about specific political prisoners, let them know when they're when they need more support and all this kind of stuff, just to keep you informed. So I'll send that out too. So again, thank you so much, Janine. We it's late now. We know you have to get some rest. So we really appreciate you, and we got to do this more. We got to do this more with Janine and Janet. Where's Janet?
Oh, she's out. She's out
Okay.
taking some.
Okay. Tell her we send our love, and we send our appreciation to her too, and we thank you so much, because it's not easy to do this, and I know you're speaking all the time. So you made this time for us, so we really appreciate it. So I'm going to hand it over to Storm so she can close us out, and I'll be talking to you. Okay, all right.
All
Take
right.
care. All
Yeah.
right.
Thank
Okay.
you for inviting me, and this is important to me too. So thank you all for inviting me, and I hope I was able to help out and give y'all something that y'all could use.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Absolutely. I feel like you did. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Miss Gloria, we thank you. Sebastian, I'm glad it's got you thinking. I think it did a job. It got all of us thinking, right? What else do we need to be doing just to support our fellow human beings, but especially those who are political prisoners? And I think in this current climate, we all need to think about the possibility of being political prisoners, right? Whatever your thoughts are. If they're not in alignment, you could be a political prisoner, right? Our rights are, everybody's rights are being stripped. So we really need to be thoughtful about that. There was a time when people thought, oh, you know, it happens to this person or happens to that person. It's like there's a quote that said, you know, first it was this person and then it was that person and now it's me.
Right.
Right. So it
and it's a different thing now. I mean, you
yes.
could be put in jail, and like if you're not a part of an organization, you know, you're just there, you know. So but yeah. So yeah, you got to think about that. It's a new generation of political prisoners. I mean, just you know, for the environmental thing, it's anything. So yeah, that's something to think about. Thanks for bringing that up.
So this was really powerful. We thank everyone for being here tonight. We hope if you had a question, you got it answered. But please look out for more engaging political education classes. They're most Thursday nights, and we appreciate you all coming.
So let's end up by saying, on the move.
On the move.
Breathe them all. Breathe them all. On the move.
Breathe them all.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Janine, for your time and for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.